Okay, so we have to choose what Mark's lightning talk is going to be about. Body shots.
Body shots.
I'm so tired of talking about specs.
You said you would never get tired of talking about it.
Yeah, maybe I lied just a little. Any special requests? Haircuts. The Follicle Follies saga. You may have seen some photos of me in cornrows. It's all GIMP action, that's all I can say. It's just playing around in Photoshop. Any requests? Okay, I've got like a greatest hits of short speeches. One is like why BZR and distributed revision control is really important. Anybody heard that one before? Marlies! Marlies! What's that all about?
I don't know what you said.
Oh, well then you seem like a prime candidate for BZR talk. Come closer. Come sit over here.
Mark, do Star City. Cool
What's
stuff
that?
in Star City.
Can I have your
Cool stuff in Star City.
Then I'll listen.
Okay, I'll do like the, how much time do I have left? 4 minutes?
Something like that.
Okay, I'll do like the 4 greatest highlights of cosmonaut training. The first is Russian culture. This is the most extraordinary thing. Russian language, Russian culture are absolutely amazing. I think one of the greatest things that came out of this whole experience was spending months and months and months deeply immersed in the midst of this. And my best kind of description of Russian language, and I really have come to believe that to understand someone from a different culture, you have to learn to speak their language, because so much of our culture is tied up to language. The Russian language is like testosterone and ballet in the same space. Same like quantum space and time, testosterone and ballet. And that's exactly what the Russians are like. Very strong, and then also very kind of elegant and nuanced. So when you look at all of the Russian technology, for example, it's very sturdy, very tough, very rough, but then also incredibly elegant. And the best example of that is the engineering that holds the Soyuz in place before it launches, right? The NASA has this enormously complicated system of gantries that pull themselves away, and if any of them forget to pull themselves away accidentally, then kaboom. In Russia, they have a really straightforward system of kind of pressure plates with weighted triangular structures. And so the rocket is sitting on these pressure plates, and it's very, very heavy, right? 300, 400 tons. And so its weight pushes down on that plate, and then through a series of gimbals, locks the rocket in place. As the rocket starts to generate thrust, the moment the rocket effectively generates enough thrust to lift itself off the ground, the weights pull the gimbals away. And so the whole thing is, it's all engineering. There's not a single piece of electronics in the whole thing. If the rocket has enough thrust to get off the ground, then all the infrastructure to keep it vertical goes away, because now it can do that for itself. So incredibly simple, incredibly elegant, and ultimately very robust, very cheap. They never, ever had anything approaching a failure on that front. So that's the first thing. The second great thing of cosmonaut training is zero-G training. And it's sort of great in as much fun as throwing up violently and feeling sick for a day can be, because that's basically what happens the first time you do zero-G training. You show up at this military airbase with all of these wrecks of airplanes and all sort of rusting hulks on the sides. The week before we did this for the first time, an identical plane had crashed on takeoff at the same airport and was still at the end of the runway, most of it. So you get on there and they start trying you out for these parachutes. And so you're like, hey, hold on a sec, we're going to stay in the airplane, right? The guy says, no, it's Russia, sooner or later the wings fall off every airplane. Okay. So you practice doing the parachute and you're being very, very attentive. And then as soon as the plane takes off, well,
You're
No, 4 minutes though.
1 minute. That's the 4 minute mark.
so then as soon as the plane takes off, they say, okay, now everyone take your parachutes off. And you're like, whoa, hold on a sec, now we need the parachutes, right? We're in there. And they say, no, don't worry, we put all the parachutes at the door. And if there's a problem, you just get your parachute. They all look the same, right? They're all in a pile, and they all look the same. But you've like carefully customized this. Now you get your parachute, and then you jump out the back of the airplane. Score. So that's zero-G training. I'll save the rest for later. How's that?
Keep going. Yay! You've got 3 more to do.
3 more watts.
You said you had five cool points.
Yeah, but I've got like 30 seconds.
That's okay. Talk about it.
Okay, all right. So next big thing then would be vestibular training. Now this is another sort of classic example of where I think the Russians are really brilliant, right? They say, let me tell you now, in space you're going to be sick, so no problem, we make you sick on the ground, and then you understand, you can work. And it's absolutely true, actually. You can train your body to do all sorts of interesting things, right? So most of us, we spend most of our time living in our heads and in ideas and not really sort of conscious of our bodies. And that was certainly true of me. So it was very interesting to sort of watch and observe physical training response, right? Because the first time you sit in the chair, I remember sitting there, you're sitting in this blacked out sort of cylindrical shape, not quite room, but big thing. And outside are all of these doctors all watching equipments, and you've got sort of wires up the wazoo and on your chest and in your head and everything. And so you start spinning around and around and you're doing this, I think so far so good, and then about 3 minutes later you feel so far so bad, and about 3 minutes later you think, oh shit, I'm gonna throw up. And literally, you know how you get that feeling where your glands kind of go, oof, you know you're gonna throw up? Literally as that happened, I heard the woman in Russian say something and everybody laughed, and it turned out that later when I could speak Russian, what she'd said was, yep, we got him. So basically they can measure the physiological response of everything. She knew exactly how I was feeling. But the interesting thing is, so the next time you do that, you can do 7.5 minutes and you train your body to do that. And about a month before the flight, my flight doc said, he said, look, it's not compulsory, but what I would recommend you do is you do the chair every day in the days before the flight. And of the crew that flew, those of us who actually did that had a much easier time adapting. Because you're always going to get, you know, it's different. It's not the same as spinning around in a chair on the earth. But you do train the body to somehow, you know, learn to disconnect and lose its need to have a sense of balance, because up there you don't have a sense of balance. It doesn't work at all. So that was a very interesting experience to sort of see how the body adapts over time, given training. When you can really measure it, right, you can see in each session how you've done. All right.